I've played hide and seek hundreds of times in my life. But this was the only time I wasn't hiding from a friend. This was the only time someone else was hiding with us. What happened that night is the reason I will never play that game again, no matter how old I am. My name isn't important, but I was 15 when this happened. It was late September, on a Friday night, just starting to get cold where I lived. My parents had gone to dinner with some family friends and told me they wouldn't be home until very late. I had the house to myself. And like usual, I invited my neighbor and best friend, Chris. He lived across the street, same age as me, and we always hung out in my basement, playing games, watching movies, wasting time. But that night, after a couple of hours, we got bored. We were sitting on the floor, scrolling through our phones, when Chris suddenly looked at me and said, "Hey, want to play hide and seek?" I laughed at him. We were 15. It felt stupid. But we had played once before with a group of kids, and it was fun. And honestly, the house felt different at night. Creepy, even. So after a minute, I said yeah. We decided to make it scarier. We turned off almost every light in the house, except for a dim lamp in the living room. Just enough for us to see shadows, shapes, but nothing else. Chris counted first. I went to hide. The funny thing is, I wasn't even trying to be creative. I just slipped behind the couch in the living room, the most obvious spot ever. But that ended up being the creepiest place in the house that night. From behind the couch, I could see through the small gap at the bottom, just enough to see someone's legs when they walked past, just enough to see silhouettes moving in the dim light. I heard Chris finish counting. Then footsteps started moving through the house. He checked the kitchen first, then the hallway, then upstairs. I waited. A few minutes passed, and I heard footsteps coming back down the stairs. Slow, careful steps, almost like he was trying not to make noise. Then the steps walked into the living room, right in front of the couch. I could see the person's feet, dark socks, slightly dirty like they'd been in the backyard. But what made me freeze wasn't the dirt. It was the size. Those weren't Chris's feet. They were bigger, longer, different shape. And whoever it was, they were standing perfectly still, like they were listening to me breathe. I stayed silent, frozen. After maybe 10 seconds, the feet turned and walked away. Slow, deliberate, not rushed, not confused, like they already knew where Chris was. I waited until I heard someone shout, "Found you!" Chris. He had no idea. I stood up and walked out from behind the couch, feeling shaken but trying not to show it. Chris was smiling, but I immediately said, "Dude, did you walk into the living room before you found me?" He looked confused. "No, I went straight upstairs. Why?" I didn't know how to explain without sounding paranoid, so I said nothing. We switched roles. This time, I counted. When I finished, I started searching. And right away, something felt off. The house was too quiet, the kind of quiet that presses against your ears, like the whole house is listening. I checked the basement, then the kitchen. Then I heard something upstairs, a faint creaking, floorboards shifting under weight. I went up slowly, trying not to alert him. The sound came from the hallway, specifically the closet at the end. The closet door was slightly open, dark inside. I thought he was hiding there, so I walked over and swung the door open. "Got you!" I stopped. The closet was empty, but the coats hanging inside were moving, swaying. Something or someone had just been in there seconds before I opened it. My stomach dropped, and before I could react, I heard Chris whisper shouting from downstairs, "Dude, come here!" I rushed back down, expecting him to be scared, but he wasn't. He was confused, annoyed. "Did you just try to scare me?" I shook my head. "No, I was upstairs. Why?" His face went pale. "Someone walked down into the basement. I thought it was you." We stared at each other. We were the only ones in the house. At least, we thought so. Without talking, we grabbed 2 baseball bats from the corner. It wasn't bravery, just panic disguised as logic. We slowly moved toward the basement door. The air coming from the stairs was cold, too cold. We crept down 1 step at a time. Every creak echoed like the house was hollow. At the bottom, the basement lights were still off. Only faint moonlight came through the tiny window near the ceiling. Something shifted in the darkness. Soft, quick. Both of us jumped. I reached for the pull string of the naked light bulb and yanked it. The entire basement lit up in a sickly yellow glow. No one there. We searched behind boxes, under the old table, behind the furnace. Nothing. But just when we were about to go back upstairs, Chris pointed at the far corner. There were footprints. Fresh, bare footprints in the thin layer of dust on the floor. And they weren't ours. They were bigger, longer, different shape. And whoever it was, they led to the back of the basement. Straight to the small storage room, a room we hadn't opened in months. The door was slightly open. Not much, just an inch. Enough to show darkness inside. Enough to suggest someone had slipped in there recently. I whispered, "Did you open that earlier?" He shook his head. We stood still, listening. At first, nothing. Then, a breath. A slow, heavy exhale coming from inside that room. That was all it took. We sprinted back up the stairs, slammed the door, and locked it. We didn't talk, we didn't argue, we just stood there listening. Then something quietly pressed against the other side of the door. A soft thud, like someone placing their forehead against it. We backed away slowly. We didn't even grab our stuff. We ran outside, across the street to Chris's house, and told his parents everything. His dad grabbed a flashlight and came back with us. He checked the entire house, the basement, the storage room. No one. But the footprints were still there, leading into the storage room and stopping at the back wall. Whoever was in there never walked back out. The police came later and searched. Again, they found nothing. No signs of forced entry, no broken windows, no open doors. But they did find one chilling detail. The basement window, the tiny one near the ceiling, had dusty fingerprints on the inside. Someone had been inside the house long before we ever started playing. Someone who knew how to move quietly. Someone who stood inches away from me behind the couch and watched us search for each other in the dark. To this day, neither of us knows who it was. The police never figured it out. My parents never believed us. And Chris and I never talked about it again. But I will never forget those footsteps, those footprints, that breath, and the feeling that someone had been waiting in my house the entire time. Not to play, Not to hide, just to watch.